Jake Miller sat in the back row of the big classroom on Nexus Prime Station. Around him, alien students from 12 different worlds waited for their teacher. Some had feathers, some had scales, and some looked like walking crystals. The room smelled like metal and recycled air. Today was the day everyone feared. Survival training with real creatures from Deathworlds. Jake had heard the other students talking about it for weeks. The bird-like Quillen students made scared chirping sounds. The rock-hard Torvan warriors checked their armor over and over. Even the ghost-like Mishari floated lower than usual. Jake did not feel scared. He came from Earth, which everyone called the worst death world in the galaxy. He had grown up with dangerous animals all around him. Bears, wolves, sharks. These were normal things back home. The classroom door opened with a hiss. Instructor Zeftar walked in. He was tall, made of blue, crystal, and his voice sounded like breaking glass. All the students sat up straight. Even the tough Torvan students looked nervous. "Today you will face real predators," Zeftar said. His crystal body flickered with light. Not training videos, not fake holograms, real creatures that kill. A Quillen student in the front row started shaking. Her yellow feathers puffed up with fear. Next to her, a Torvan warrior's armor plates rattled as he trembled. "These specimens come from the most dangerous worlds we know," the instructor continued. "Each one has killed trained hunters. Each one can end your life in seconds." Jake yawned. He had stayed up late playing cards with his roommate Ben. This whole thing seemed silly. How bad could these creatures be? Zeftar pressed a button on his control pad. The wall behind him became clear, showing a big room filled with glowing cages. Inside each cage was a different creature. Jake leaned forward to get a better look. In the first cage, something that looked like a giant spider spit green acid at the glass. The acid hissed and smoked. Students gasped and moved back in their seats. "The Vorthak hunter from Kepler 4432b, Zeftar announced. "Its acid can melt through most metals. It has never been tamed." The second cage held something Jake could barely see. It kept appearing and disappearing like a ghost. "The phase wraith from the null dimension," the instructor said. "It can become solid or gas at will. It feeds on fear." More creatures filled the other cages. Things with too many teeth, things with claws like swords, things that glowed with poison. Each one made the alien students more afraid. Then Jake saw the last cage and started laughing. Everyone turned to look at him. The crystal instructor's light flickered with surprise. A Mishari student floated away from Jake like he might be dangerous. "Is something funny, Cadet Miller?" Zeftar asked. Jake pointed at the last cage. "You brought a wombat?" The creature in the cage was about the size of a large dog. It had brown fur, small eyes, and short legs. It was currently asleep in a corner, looking like a furry boulder. "That is an Earth apex predator," Zeftar said, his voice sharp. "Classification: extreme threat. It has armor-like skin that stops bullets, jaws that can crush bone, claws that dig through solid rock." Jake could not stop grinning. "That's Bruce." "Bruce?" "Well, not that exact one, but they're all basically Bruce. Back home, people think they're cute. Kids visit them at zoos." The classroom erupted in shocked sounds. Quillen students chirped in panic. Torvan warriors slammed their fists on their desks. Even the floating Mishari made sounds like wind through broken glass. "Silence," Zeftar commanded. The room went quiet. "Cadet Miller, this creature has killed multiple trained hunters on your homeworld." "Probably because they cornered it," Jake said with a shrug. "Wombats don't like being bothered when they're eating or sleeping, but they're mostly just big lazy plant eaters." Lisa Park, a half-human student sitting nearby, grabbed Jake's arm. "Jake, shut up," she whispered. "You're going to get us all in trouble." But Jake was looking at the sleeping wombat with a big smile. It reminded him of his neighbor's old dog back home. Same sleepy expression, same round body. "The testing will begin in 1 hour," Zeftar announced. "Each student will enter the containment area with one creature. Your goal is to survive for 10 minutes without weapons or armor. Students started talking all at once. Most sounded terrified. Jake heard someone throwing up in the bathroom. A Quillen student fainted and had to be carried out by medical robots. Which creature would you choose, Cadet Miller? Zeftar asked, his crystal body flashing bright blue. Jake did not hesitate. Bruce. The Earth Predator? The sleepy plant eater, yeah. The instructor's light dimmed. Very well, but first let me show you what your sleepy plant eater can do. Zeftar pressed another button. A metal robot rolled into the wombat's cage. The wombat opened one eye, looked annoyed, and went back to sleep. Activate threat response protocol, Zeftar ordered. The robot made loud beeping sounds and flashed bright lights at the wombat. Finally, the animal stood up with a grunt that sounded like an old man getting out of bed. Observe its aggressive stance, the instructor said. The wombat scratched behind its ear with a back foot, then waddled over to a food dish. Its lightning-fast reflexes, Zeftar continued, sounding less sure of himself. The wombat slowly munched on some vegetables, making happy grunting sounds. It's... The instructor trailed off. It's excellent appetite? Jake suggested helpfully. The crystal being flickered rapidly with what might have been anger or confusion. Around the classroom, some students started to look less scared and more confused. Ben Rodriguez, Jake's roommate, raised his hand. Sir, are you sure that's a predator? Earth animals are classified by the Galactic Council based on scientific data, Zeftar said firmly. Bite force measurements, defensive capabilities, territorial behavior patterns. Jake nodded. Sure, they can bite hard if you really make them mad, and they're built like tanks. But calling a wombat a predator is like calling a cow a racing animal. Technically possible, but missing the point. The wombat in the cage had finished eating and was now digging in the dirt with its powerful claws, making a shallow burrow for another nap. Destructive excavation behavior, Zeftar announced, trying to sound scary again. Redecorating, Jake corrected. Some students started to giggle. Not the scared kind of giggle, but the kind that happens when you realize something silly has been happening. The instructor's crystal body went completely dark for a moment, then blazed with angry light. Enough. Testing begins in 50 minutes. Prepare yourselves for combat with some of the galaxy's most dangerous creatures. As students filed out of the classroom, Jake stayed behind, watching the wombat settle down for its nap. Hey, Bruce, he said quietly to the glass. Don't worry, buddy. I'll get you out of there soon. The wombat opened one eye, looked at Jake, for a long moment, then closed it again with a contented sigh. Jake had no idea that this moment would change everything for humans in the galaxy. He just knew that the big furry guy looked like he needed a friend. 50 minutes later, Jake stood in front of the wombat's cage in the testing room. The containment area was huge, with white walls and bright lights. Medical robots waited nearby, ready to help injured students. Other students were already in their testing areas. Jake could hear screaming from the Vorthak Hunters section. Someone was crying near the Phase Wraith's cage. The sounds echoed off the walls, making everyone more nervous. Instructor Zeftar stood behind a control panel made of the same blue crystal as his body. His light flickered faster when he was excited or angry. Right now it was flashing like a warning beacon. Cadet Miller, he announced over the speaker system. You have chosen to face the Earth Apex Predator. Are you sure about this decision? Jake looked at the wombat through the clear barrier. The animal was awake now, sniffing around its cage with curiosity. When it saw Jake, it tilted its head like a dog trying to understand something. I'm sure, Jake said. Behind the observation windows, other students and teachers had gathered to watch. Jake could see Lisa Park pressing her face against the glass, looking worried. Ben Rodriguez stood next to her, recording everything on his datapad. Dr. Maya Collins, the station's human biology teacher, pushed through the crowd. She looked angry and scared at the same time. Stop this test immediately, she demanded, banging on Zeftar's control panel. The crystal instructor turned toward her. Dr. Collins, this is a standard survival examination. That's not a standard predator, she said, pointing at the wombat. The classification system is wrong. That animal is not dangerous to humans. The Galactic Council's data shows I don't care what the data shows, Dr. Collins interrupted. I grew up on Earth. I know these animals. But Zeftar had already pressed the release button. The barrier between Jake and the wombat began to fade away. 10 minutes begins now, the instructor announced. Jake stepped into the cage area. The space was bigger than it looked from outside, about the size of a basketball court. The floor was covered with dirt and rocks, made to look like the wombat's natural home. The wombat looked up at Jake with small, dark eyes. It was bigger than Jake had expected, almost 3 feet tall and probably weighing as much as a person. Its brown fur was thick and coarse, and its body was built like a small tank. "Hey there, big guy," Jake said softly, crouching down to make himself smaller and less scary. The wombat took a step toward him, then stopped. Its nose twitched as it smelled Jake's scent. In the observation area, someone gasped, "It's going to attack." But the wombat just sat down and scratched behind its ear again. The movement was slow and peaceful, like an old dog on a sunny afternoon. Jake laughed. "You're not scary at all, are you?" He moved closer, step by step. The wombat watched him but did not seem afraid or angry. When Jake was close enough to touch, he stopped and held out his hand. "Come here, buddy. Let me smell you first, just like a good dog." The wombat sniffed Jake's fingers. Its nose was wet and cold, just like every other mammal Jake had ever met. After a moment, it pushed its big head against Jake's palm. "There we go," Jake said, starting to pet the animal's head. "You're just a big fuzzy teddy bear, aren't you?" The wombat made a sound like a happy grunt and leaned into the petting. Its fur was surprisingly soft under the coarse outer layer. In the observation room, absolute silence had fallen. Even the screaming from other test areas seemed quieter. Jake sat down cross-legged in the dirt. The wombat immediately came closer, sniffing at his uniform and boots. When Jake started scratching behind its ears, the animal made pleased rumbling sounds. "Who's a good boy?" Jake cooed, using the same voice he used with every pet he had ever met. "Yes, you are. You're such a good chunky kitty." The word kitty sent shockwaves through the watching crowd. A Quillen student fainted. A Torvan warrior's armor plate started rattling so hard it sounded like a machine breaking down. Instructor Zeftar's crystal body went completely dark, then blazed with confused light. This is not normal predator behavior." Dr. Collins crossed her arms and glared at him. "Because it's not a predator." Jake continued petting the wombat, which had now rolled over on its side to get belly rubs. The fearsome Deathworld creature was making happy snorting sounds and kicking its short legs in the air. "Look at that belly," Jake said with delight. "So round and fuzzy, you're like a living pillow." The wombat wiggled with joy, trying to get closer to Jake's hands. Its claws, which the database said could tear through solid rock, were carefully kept away from Jake's skin. The animal seemed to understand that humans were fragile. 5 minutes remaining, Zeftar announced, but his voice sounded uncertain. Jake had found a stick in the dirt and was playing with the wombat like it was a puppy. The animal would grab the stick gently in its mouth, shake it a few times, then drop it for Jake to throw. "Fetch, Bruce, go get it." The wombat waddled after the stick with surprising speed, picked it up and brought it back to Jake. Its tail, which was just a small stub, wiggled with excitement. More and more aliens gathered at the observation windows. Word was spreading through the station that something impossible was happening in Testing Room 7. A group of hive-mind insectoid students clicked their mandibles in confusion. They communicated through shared thoughts, and Jake could tell they were having a heated mental discussion about what they were seeing. Ben Rodriguez was recording everything, his eyes wide with amazement. "This is going to be the most famous video in galactic history," he muttered. Lisa Park had given up looking worried and was now just shaking her head in disbelief. "Only Jake," she said to herself. Only Jake would turn a survival test into a petting zoo. The wombat had discovered Jake's bootlaces and was trying to untie them with its teeth, very gently and carefully. It looked up at Jake as if asking, "Permission?" "Sure, you can play with the laces," Jake said, laughing. "Just don't eat them, okay? They probably don't taste very good." Dr. Collins turned to address the crowd of watching students and teachers. This is exactly what I've been trying to tell the classification committee. Earth animals are not automatically dangerous just because they're big and strong. Most of them are gentle and less threatened. A Mishari student floated closer to the window, its gas form shimmering with curiosity. But the data shows massive bite force and aggressive territorial behavior. Wombats defend their burrows if attacked, Dr. Collins explained. And yes, they can bite hard if they have to. But look at this one. It's not in its territory, it's not being threatened, and it's with a species it recognizes as non-threatening. This is normal wombat behavior. Jake had now completely relaxed, lying on his back in the dirt while the wombat used his chest as a pillow. The animal was the size and weight of a large dog, but it seemed to understand that Jake needed to breathe. "You're heavier than you look, buddy," Jake said, gently pushing the wombat to a more comfortable position. "But you're definitely the cuddliest apex predator I've ever met." 2 minutes remaining, Zeftar announced. His crystal body was flickering between different colors now, like he could not decide what to feel. The wombat had found Jake's uniform pocket and was investigating it with its nose. Jake pulled out a protein bar from his lunch and unwrapped it. "You want to try some human food? It's probably not as good as whatever they've been feeding you." He broke off a small piece and offered it to the wombat. The animal sniffed it carefully, then took it gently from Jake's fingers. It chewed thoughtfully, made a pleased grunt, and looked at Jake hopefully for more. "It likes processed food," someone in the observation room said in amazement. "Most earth mammals do," Dr. Collins replied. "Humans have been sharing food with animals for thousands of years. It's one of the ways we make friends." Jake shared his entire protein bar with the wombat piece by piece. The animal ate politely, never grabbing or biting, always waiting for Jake to offer each piece. "Time remaining, 30 seconds, Zeftar said. Jake looked up at the observation windows where dozens of alien faces stared back at him. Some looked confused, some looked amazed, and some looked terrified. "Hey, everyone," he called out, waving from where he lay in the dirt with a wombat using him as furniture. "Meet Bruce. He's the friendliest apex predator in the galaxy." The wombat looked up at the sound of its name, then licked Jake's face with a big wet tongue. "Time," Zeftar announced weakly. But nobody moved to end the test. Everyone just stared as Jake sat up and gave the wombat one final hug. "I have to go now, Bruce," he said sadly. "But I'll come visit you soon, okay?" The wombat seemed to understand. It nuzzled Jake's hand one more time, then settled down in the warm spot where Jake had been lying. As Jake walked toward the exit barrier, he turned back to wave. "See you later, good boy." The wombat lifted one paw, almost like it was waving. Back. Within an hour, everyone on Nexus Prime Station knew about Jake and the wombat. The story spread faster than station gossip usually did. Students who had been in other classes came running to see the tame Deathworld predator. Teachers left their offices to witness what some were calling impossible interspecies contact. Jake sat in the station's main cafeteria, trying to eat lunch while aliens stared at him from every table. His protein burger felt cold and tasteless. He was more worried about Bruce than hungry anyway. "This is insane," Ben Rodriguez said, sliding into the seat across from Jake. His datapad showed thousands of views on the video he had posted. "The whole galactic net is talking about this." Lisa Park joined them, carrying a tray of the blue gelatin that passed for food on alien stations. "My mom just called from the Velthari homeworld. Even she's heard about it, and she lives 3 star systems away." Jake pushed his food around his plate. "I just want to make sure Bruce is okay. That cage is too small for him." "Bruce is fine," Dr. Collins said, appearing at their table like she had been looking for them. "I just checked on him. He's sleeping in the corner, dreaming about belly rubs probably." She sat down without being invited, which meant she had something important to say. Dr. Collins only broke social rules when she was excited about science or worried about her students. "Jake, what you did today has caused some serious problems," she began. "Good problems or bad problems?" Lisa asked. "Lisa, both." The good news is that half the galaxy now knows that Earth's Deathworld classification might be wrong. The bad news is that the other half thinks you have some kind of mind control powers. Jake nearly choked on his drink. Mind control? Think about it from their perspective, Dr. Collins explained. They've been told for decades that Earth creatures are the most dangerous in the galaxy. Then a human walks into a cage with one and it acts like a pet. Some species think you must have used telepathic abilities. Ben laughed. Jake can barely control his own mind, let alone someone else's. Thanks, buddy, Jake said dryly. Dr. Collins pulled up a holographic display from her datapad. News feeds from dozens of worlds showed the same video over and over. Jake playing with Bruce while alien students watched in shock. The Quillen News Network is calling it First Contact with a Deathworld Apex Predator, she read. The Torvin military channel says it's proof of human superiority over lower species. And the Hive Mind Science Council wants to study your brain to understand how you dominated the creature. I didn't dominate anything, Jake protested. I just petted him. I know that. You know that. But they don't know that. The cafeteria had grown quieter as more students tried to listen to their conversation. Jake noticed that the alien students were sitting farther away from human tables than usual. Some looked scared, others looked curious, but none looked normal. What about Instructor Zeftar? Lisa asked. He looked pretty upset when the test ended. Dr. Collins sighed. He's having an academic crisis. His entire understanding of xenobiology just got turned upside down by a college student and a sleepy marsupial. Wombats aren't marsupials, Jake corrected automatically. See? You know more about Earth animals than our official instructor does. That's part of the problem. A group of Mashari students floated past their table, whispering to each other in their musical language. Jake caught a few words that sounded like human and dangerous. Are they afraid of me now? He asked. Some are, Dr. Collins admitted. The ones who understand what happened are amazed. The ones who don't understand are terrified. Fear of the unknown is universal, even among advanced species. Jake felt sick to his stomach, and it was not from the cafeteria food. I didn't mean to scare anyone. I just wanted to help Bruce. I know. But your actions have consequences beyond this station. Dr. Collins pulled up another news feed, this one from the Galactic Council chambers on Central Prime. The headline read, Emergency. Session called to review Deathworld classifications. They're taking this seriously? Ben asked, reading over Jake's shoulder. Very seriously. Earth's classification affects everything from trade agreements to military alliances. If we're not actually as dangerous as everyone thought, it changes the balance of power in this part of the galaxy. Jake had never thought about politics. He just liked animals and wanted them to be happy. Now it seemed like petting a wombat had started some kind of diplomatic crisis. There's more, Dr. Collins continued. Commandant Thorol wants to see you in his office in 20 minutes. Lisa groaned. Thorol, the big scary dragon guy? He's not actually a dragon, Dr. Collins said. But yes, the big scary one. Jake finished his protein burger without tasting it. His friends walked with him to the administrative levels of the station, where the important offices were located. The corridors here were wider and fancier, designed to impress visitors from different worlds. Commandant Thorol's office was huge, with a ceiling high enough for flying species and gravity adjusters for species that could not walk. The Commandant himself was even bigger than Jake remembered. He looked like a cross between a dinosaur and a shark, with teeth that could bite, a person in half. But when Jake entered the office, Thorol was not alone. Instructor Zeftar stood near the window, his crystal body dim and flickering weakly. 3 other teachers Jake did not recognize sat in chairs designed for their different body types. Cadet Miller, Thorol rumbled in a voice like distant thunder. Please sit down. Jake sat in the only human-sized chair, which made him feel very small in the huge office. Dr. Collins took a position behind him, which he appreciated. What you did today, Thorol began, was either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, sir, Jake replied honestly. The Commandant's massive head tilted slightly, which might have been amusement. Indeed. Do you understand what you have done? I played with a wombat. You challenged the scientific understanding of an entire galactic civilization. Jake had not thought of it that way. I just knew Bruce wasn't dangerous. Any human would have known that. Any human? Asked one of the other teachers, a floating blob of what looked like intelligent water. Well, maybe not any human, but most humans who grew up around animals, yeah. Instructor Zeftar finally spoke up, his voice much quieter than usual. The creature's behavior with you was unprecedented in our records. Because you've never had a human interact with one before, Jake said. You've only studied them from a distance or when they were scared and defending themselves. The crystal instructor's light flickered brighter. Are you saying our methodology is flawed? Jake looked at Dr. Collins, who nodded encouragingly. I'm saying maybe you need to ask humans about human animals before you classify them as super dangerous. The water blob teacher rippled with what might have been laughter. The human has a point, Zeftar. This is not a laughing matter, Zeftar protested. Our classification system has kept the galaxy safe for 300 years. Safe from what? Jake asked. Wombats? They're basically furry potatoes with legs. Thorol leaned forward in his massive chair. Cadet Miller, your homeworld is classified as the most dangerous planet in known space. Creatures there regularly kill and eat each other. Your own species survived by becoming the most successful predators on a world full of predators. Jacob shrugged. Yeah, we're pretty tough, but that doesn't mean everything on Earth wants to kill you. Most of our animals are just trying to find food and stay alive, same as everyone else. But the data, Zeftar began. The data is incomplete, Dr. Collins interrupted. We've been telling the Galactic Council this for years. You can't understand. Earth animals without understanding how they interact with humans. We've been living together for thousands of years. The meeting continued for another hour. Jake answered questions about Earth animals, human behavior, and how people on his homeworld dealt with dangerous creatures. Some of his answers seemed to surprise the teachers, especially when he explained that humans kept some predators as pets and friends. You invite carnivorous animals into your homes? The water blob asked in amazement. Dogs and cats, yeah. Some people have snakes or lizards too. We like having animal friends. And these pets do not attack you? Not usually. Sometimes cats scratch when they're grumpy, but mostly they just want food and attention. When the meeting finally ended, Commandant Thorol stood up to his full, impressive height. Cadet Miller, you have created a situation that will require careful handling. The galaxy is watching this station now, watching you. Jake felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. What happens to Bruce? The creature will remain here for now under observation, and you, Thorol paused dramatically, will help us figure out what to do next. As they left the office, Jake felt like the entire galaxy had suddenly become much more complicated. All he had wanted was to pet a friendly animal. This is just the beginning, Dr. Collins said quietly as they walked back toward the student quarters. Jake nodded, already planning his next visit to Bruce. Whatever happened next, he was going to make sure his furry friend was okay. The politics and classifications and scientific debates could wait. A wombat needed belly rubs, and that was more important than anything else. 3 weeks later, Jake's life had become very strange. Every morning he woke up to find news reporters from different worlds waiting outside his dorm room. His daily visits to Bruce had turned into public events, with students and teachers gathering to watch the human Deathworlder bond. Jake did not like being famous. He just wanted to spend time with his friend and attend his classes like a normal student. But normal had become impossible when half the galaxy was debating whether humans were mind controllers, animal tamers, or something even more unusual. The Quillen Science Academy wants to give you an honorary degree, Ben said, reading from his data pad over breakfast. The Torvin Military College wants to recruit you as a special weapons expert. And the Hive Mind Council, I can't pronounce what they want to do, but it involves studying your brain patterns. Jake pushed his eggs around his plate. The station's food had gotten better since the cafeteria staff realized that famous humans might attract more visitors, but he still missed home cooking. What about the bad news, he asked. Ben's expression grew more serious. 3 worlds have filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council. They say humans are too dangerous to be trusted with interspecies contact. They want Earth quarantined. Lisa Park, who had been unusually quiet during breakfast, finally spoke up. My family's getting death threats. Jake and Ben stared at her in shock. What? Jake said. Some extremist groups think humans are planning to use our animal control powers to invade other worlds. They're targeting human families living on alien planets. Jake felt sick. This was exactly what he had feared. His simple act of kindness had somehow made life worse for humans everywhere. Dr. Collins appeared at their table, moving faster than usual. Jake, we need to go. Now. What's wrong? Emergency session with the Galactic Council. They're voting on the Earth quarantine proposal in 2 hours, and they want to question you first. The trip to Central Prime took 30 minutes by express transport ship. Jake had never seen the galactic capital before, and under different circumstances, he would have been amazed by the massive city that covered an entire moon. The Galactic Council chamber was even more impressive and intimidating than he had imagined. Representatives from over 200 worlds sat in a huge circular room that rose up like the inside of a giant sphere. At the center was a small platform where witnesses gave testimony. Jake felt very small standing on that platform, looking up at hundreds of alien faces staring down at him. Some looked curious, some looked hostile, and some looked like nothing he could understand. State your name for the record, said the council speaker, a being that looked like a tree with eyes. Jake Miller, student at Nexus Prime Academy from Earth. Human Jake Miller, the speaker continued. You stand accused of using unknown abilities to manipulate a classified dangerous creature. How do you answer this charge? I didn't manipulate anything, Jake said, his voice echoing in the huge chamber. I just petted a wombat. Murmurs rose from the galleries where observers sat. Jake could see news crews from dozens of worlds recording everything. The creature in question, interrupted a council member who looked like a giant insect, has been classified as an apex predator based on documented attacks on trained personnel. Those attacks happened because people scared the wombats, Jake explained. Any animal will fight back if it thinks it's in danger. But wombats aren't naturally aggressive, they're actually pretty lazy and friendly. Impossible, declared another council member, this one made of what appeared to be living metal. Our xenobiological experts have studied the data extensively. Dr. Collins, speaking from the witness section, asked permission to address the council. Honored representatives, I submit that your data is incomplete. You have studied Earth animals without consulting Earth's dominant species. Humans are hardly the dominant species, the metal being replied. By our measurements, several Earth creatures surpass human physical capabilities. Jake could not help laughing, which caused another stir in the chamber. That's like saying elephants rule Africa because they're bigger than people. Physical strength isn't everything. Then how do you explain human dominance of your world? Asked a floating jellyfish-like representative. Tools, cooperation, and intelligence, Jake said. Also, most Earth animals don't want to fight us. We've learned to live together. The questioning continued for over an hour. Jake tried to explain concepts that seemed obvious to him, but were apparently revolutionary to the galactic community. That animals had different personalities, that most species avoided conflict when possible, that cooperation often worked better than force. You claim that humans and Earth creatures have formed friendships? Asked the tree-like speaker, sounding like the idea was strange beyond belief. All the time. Humans have been making friends with animals for thousands of years. Dogs, cats, horses, birds, even some reptiles and fish. My neighbor back home has a pet snake that watches TV with him. And these creatures serve you willingly? They're not servants, Jake said, getting frustrated. They're friends. We take care of each other. A new voice spoke from high in the chamber. Jake looked up to see a massive creature that looked like a cross between an octopus and a crystal formation. Human Jake Miller, are you claiming that your species has achieved voluntary interspecies cooperation on a planetary scale? Jake thought about it. I guess so, yeah. I mean, we still have wild animals that avoid people, but millions of animals choose to live with humans because we make their lives better. The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives talked to each other in dozens of languages while automated translators struggled to keep up. Jake caught fragments: unprecedented and impossible, revolutionary and dangerous. The council speaker called for order. Human Jake Miller, you will now demonstrate your claimed abilities with the creature in question. Jake's heart jumped. Bruce is here? The specimen has been transported to this facility for testing purposes. They brought Jake to a smaller chamber connected to the main hall, where Bruce sat in another too-small cage. The wombat looked stressed and unhappy, probably because of all the strange smells and sounds of the alien city. Hey, buddy, Jake said softly, approaching the cage. I'm sorry they brought you all this way. This must be really confusing. Bruce looked up at Jake's voice and immediately became more alert. When the cage barrier was removed, the wombat came, straight to Jake like a dog greeting its owner after a long day. There you are, Jake said, scratching behind Bruce's ears. I missed you too, big guy. The observation gallery, filled with council members and their scientific advisors, went completely silent. Bruce rolled over for belly rubs, making his happy grunting sounds. As you can see, Jake said, looking up at the watching aliens. He's not dangerous. He's just a gentle animal who wants some attention and maybe a snack. Incredible, breathed someone in the gallery. Jake spent 20 minutes with Bruce showing how the wombat responded to different types of interaction. The animal clearly trusted Jake completely, even allowing him to examine its teeth and claws, the same features that had led to its dangerous predator classification. His bite is strong because he needs to chew tough plant roots, Jake explained, gently opening Bruce's mouth. And his claws are for digging burrows, not attacking people. See how he keeps them pulled back when he touches me? He doesn't want to hurt me. When the demonstration ended, Jake had to say goodbye to Bruce again. It was getting harder each time. I'll see you soon, okay? These people just need to understand that you're one of the good guys. Bruce seemed to understand that. Jake was leaving. The wombat pressed its head against Jake's hand one more time, then settled down to wait patiently. Back in the main chamber, the debate had grown intense. Some representatives wanted to declare humans a dangerous species that should be isolated. Others argued that Jake's demonstration proved humans might be the key to better interspecies relations. The human shows no signs of telepathic or pheromone-based control, reported the chief scientist, a being that looked like a walking computer. His interaction with the creature appears to be based on behavioral understanding and mutual trust. Mutual trust with a Deathworld predator, the metal representative said skeptically. A Deathworld herbivore, Jake corrected from his witness platform. There's a difference. The final vote was closer than anyone had expected, 127 to 73 against the Earth quarantine proposal, with 45 abstentions. Earth would remain open to galactic contact, but under increased observation. As Jake left the council chamber, he was surrounded by reporters and officials. Everyone wanted to know what would happen next, what his plans were, whether he could work with other Earth animals. Jake had only one answer to all their questions. I just want to make sure Bruce gets a bigger home and proper care. Everything else can wait. But as they traveled back to Nexus Prime, Dr. Collins warned him that nothing would ever be simple again. You've opened a door, Jake. Now the whole galaxy wants to walk through it. 6 months after the incident that changed everything, Jake Miller stood in front of a new class of students at Nexus Prime Academy. But this was not a regular classroom. The walls were transparent, showing a large garden habitat where Bruce wandered freely among earth plants and artificial burrows. Welcome to Interspecies Understanding 101, Jake said, looking out at the mixed group of alien and human students. I'm your teaching assistant, and this is Bruce, your practical instructor. The class was Dr. Collins' idea, part of a new program funded by the Galactic Council. After months of debate and investigation, the council had decided that humans might have valuable knowledge about animal behavior that could benefit everyone. Jake was still a student himself, but his experience with Bruce had made him an expert in ways no textbook could teach. The human-animal interaction program was the first of its kind in galactic history. Who can tell me what species Bruce belongs to? Jake asked his students. A young Quillen raised her feathered hand. Earth Apex Predator, Classification Extreme. Threat? That's the old classification, Jake said with a smile. Bruce is actually a common wombat. Classification, friendly herbivore who likes belly rubs and vegetables. Some students laughed, but others still looked nervous. It would take time for the galaxy's understanding of Earth animals to change completely. The important thing to remember, Jake continued, is that classification systems are created by people, or in this case, aliens. They're useful, but they're not perfect. Sometimes you have to look beyond the data to understand the truth. Through the transparent wall, Bruce was demonstrating this truth by taking a nap in a sunny spot, occasionally opening one eye to check on the class before going back to sleep. Now let's talk about the difference between dangerous and capable of being dangerous, Jake said. Bruce has strong jaws and sharp claws. In the right circumstances, he could hurt someone, but that doesn't mean he will hurt someone. Lisa. Park, who had become Jake's official assistant, activated a holographic display showing Earth animals of various sizes and types. Humans live with many animals that are technically capable of being dangerous. The key is understanding their behavior and meeting their needs. A Torvan student, his armor plates gleaming in the classroom light, raised a heavily armored hand. But how do you know which animals will be friendly? Experience, observation, and respect, Jake answered. Every species has its own signals, for I'm friendly, I'm scared, I need space, and I want to play. Humans have learned to read these signals over thousands of years. The class session included hands-on observation of Bruce through the habitat walls. Students took notes as the wombat went about his daily routine, eating, digging, resting, and occasionally coming over to the observation windows when he noticed people watching. Notice how he approaches the wall when students are near, Dr. Collins pointed out from her position at the back of the classroom. This is curious behavior, not aggressive behavior. He's interested in you, not threatened by you. After the class ended, Jake stayed behind to spend time with Bruce in the habitat. This had become his favorite part of each day, the quiet time, when he could just be with his friend without cameras or observers. How are you doing, buddy? Jake asked, sitting on the soft grass that had been grown specially for the habitat. Are you happy with your new home? Bruce ambled over and immediately claimed Jake's lap as a pillow. The wombat had gained weight. Since arriving at the station, fed on a diet of fresh vegetables and specially formulated nutrients. He looked healthier and more content than ever. I think you like being famous, Jake said, scratching behind Bruce's ears. All these students coming to visit you every day. The habitat was much larger than Bruce's original cage, with different sections that mimicked various Earth environments. There were burrows for sleeping, soft areas for rolling, and even a shallow pond for drinking and cooling off. But the best part, in Jake's opinion, was the visitor area where other students and staff could come to observe Bruce safely. Every day, groups of alien students would stand at the reinforced windows watching in fascination as the fearsome Deathworld predator napped, played with toys, and begged for snacks. Jake, Dr. Collins called from the habitat entrance. Someone's here to see you. Jake looked up to see Instructor Zeftar approaching. The crystal being's light was much steadier than it had been 6 months ago, but Jake could still sense uncertainty in the way he moved. Hello, Cadet Miller, Zeftar said formally. I wanted to speak with you before the new semester begins. What about, sir? The instructor's crystal body flickered as he seemed to gather his thoughts. I owe you an apology. Jake nearly dropped the stick he had been using to play with Bruce. In all his time at the academy, he had never heard an instructor apologize to a student. Sir, my classification of the wombat as an apex predator was technically correct but practically meaningless. I relied on data without understanding context. Zeftar paused, his light dimming slightly. You taught me that knowledge without wisdom is often useless. Bruce, apparently sensing the tension in the conversation, waddled over to investigate the crystal instructor. He sniffed at Zeftar's base with curious interest. He doesn't hold grudges, Jake said, watching Bruce try to figure out what exactly Zeftar was made of. Animals are better at forgiveness than most people. Zeftar's light brightened as Bruce continued his gentle investigation. May I touch him? Jake grinned. Bruce loves meeting new friends. Just move slowly and let him smell you first. For the next few minutes, Jake watched with amazement as the strict, formal instructor learned to pet a wombat. Zeftar's crystal body changed colors with what Jake was beginning to recognize as wonder and delight. His fur is softer than the data indicated, Zeftar said quietly. Data doesn't really capture the important stuff, Jake replied. Like how he makes that happy sound when you scratch the right spot behind his ears, or how he always wants to share his food with friends. When Zeftar finally stood up, his entire demeanor had changed. I have a proposal for you, Cadet Miller. What kind of proposal? The Academy is starting a new department, practical xenobiology. We need an assistant instructor who understands the difference between scientific classification and real-world interaction. Jake felt his heart skip. You're offering me a teaching job? A learning job, Zeftar corrected. You would help redesign our curriculum while completing your own studies. We have much to learn from human approaches to interspecies contact. Jake looked down at Bruce, who was now lying contentedly between him and the crystal instructor. Would Bruce get to help? Bruce would be essential to the program, along with other Earth animals, carefully selected and properly housed. The idea was exciting and terrifying at the same time. Jake had never thought of himself as a teacher, but he knew that the galaxy's understanding of Earth animals was still badly flawed. There was so much work to do. I'll need to think about it, Jake said. Of course, but Jake... Zeftar used his first name for the first time ever. What you did that day in my classroom changed more than just one survival test. You changed how we think about intelligence, cooperation, and the relationship between different species. After Zeftar left, Jake spent another hour with Bruce thinking about the future. The galaxy was still a complicated place full of misunderstandings and fears, but it was also full of possibilities. What do you think, Bruce? Jake asked. Want to help teach the galaxy that Earth animals are mostly just big softies who want belly rubs and snacks? Bruce rolled over to expose his round belly, making his contented grunting sound. Jake took that as a yes. 3 years later, the Human-Animal Interaction Program had become one of the most popular courses in the galaxy. Students came from hundreds of worlds to learn about Earth animals and human approaches to interspecies cooperation. Jake, now a full instructor with his own classes, often told new students about the day he met Bruce. It had started as a simple survival test and ended up changing how an entire galaxy thought about friendship, understanding, and the power of looking beyond fear to find connection. Bruce, now elderly by wombat standards but still energetic enough to charm new students, had become the most famous animal in galactic history. His daily routine was broadcast live to schools across dozens of worlds, showing young beings that even the scariest-looking creatures could be gentle friends. And sometimes, late at night when the station was quiet, Jake would sit with Bruce in the habitat and remember how it all started, with one human who saw past the scary classifications to find a lonely animal who just wanted some kindness. Good boy, Bruce, Jake would whisper, scratching behind the old wombat's ears. You're the best teacher the galaxy ever had. Bruce would grunt happily and settle down for another peaceful nap, dreaming whatever dreams come to famous wombats, who had helped change the universe one belly rub at a time.